is a D6 generation pip. Yeah, one of those dots on the side of a six-sided die. Yeah, a pip, a short pip, little something. Yeah, about anything gaming related. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ. We'll see what's coming up today.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Pip. Excited to be back here with you. It's just me again today. No Rafe, no Craig, no D&D posse. Just want to give you an update on two things today. I wanted to actually give a short sort of update on, actually it's a review really, because I don't think we've ever reviewed this game. Smash Up by AEG. It's a great little card game. It has experienced a resurgence in my house. This game is by no means new. It's been out for quite some time, and I think I got it back in 2015. I played with my girls quite a bit when they were obviously younger now. As most listeners know, my oldest is in college. My youngest is about to go to college. But we played this over Father's Day weekend, and it became a huge hit, so much so my brother's family ran out and bought pretty much everything they make also, dropped some money, let's just say, on everything Smash Up. So I wanted to kind of share all that with you. Sometimes it's fun to hear about games that are out there and established and you can get instantly instead of having to find the new hotness. But the other thing I wanted to give everybody an update on was our Song of Ice and Fire campaign. As I think many of you will know, we've been doing a map-based Song of Ice and Fire campaign. We're in our second round of this thing, or second full campaign. We've played the first one to the end with 4 players. We liked this so much we adjusted the rules, tweaked them from our learnings, and then are trying it again. And so far, it's been really interesting. So I'd love to share all of that with you guys as well. So first up, Smash Up by AEG. This game's been around, as I mentioned before, a little while. The idea, the premise of this game, if you will, I wonder if there's like a little summary I could give a dramatic reading of here. Not really. There's no like fluff or anything in this. It's just, unless you get to like some of the fluff sets. But anyway, let me give you the high level. So it's a card game, full-on card game. And it is basically, the premise behind this thing is really that you're going to pick 2 different decks of cards. Each player is going to have 2 decks of cards. And these decks are going to be put together to form one play deck, right? Now, the interesting thing, the theme of the game is that there is pretty much every kind of pop cultural reference you can imagine in these various decks. So the original non-IP infringing sets of decks, for example, they have, the obligatory, there's zombies, there are cowboys, there are pirates, there are, it's gotten crazy now. There's things like sharks. There's actually a tornado deck. So if you have sharks and tornadoes, you, of course, yes, have a Sharknado. And then it got a little crazy. Like, there was actually a collection they called the Cease and Desist collection, where they thought they were going to get sued because things in there, in that particular set, included things like Space Knights, which were basically Jedi. There were Star Voyagers, which was basically Star Trek. There were, I believe it was Wizards, which is Harry Potter, things like that. So in any case, I got the original set back in 2015. And then at that time, I got into it with my girls. We liked it a lot. So I bought a few more decks, and I actually got what at that time was sort of the big box you can put all your card collections in, called the Big Geeky Box, which came with another couple decks. And going into Father's Day weekend, I had, 40 different decks or so. So each set of these things you buy comes with 4 or 5 more themed decks, right? But actually, before Father's Day weekend, I played it a couple times, just brought it back out. This is one of the benefits of going through and organizing your game collection. Because if you guys have been listening to the last couple episodes, I just redid that, found a lot of my old games. I was like, holy cow, here's Smash. I haven't played this in a while. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple to teach. And that's another one of the things about the game that I really like. It is a dirt simple game to teach. And initially when I started playing this game back with my kids a while ago, I didn't think there was a lot of meat on its bones. It just seemed fun. The art's fun. It's this neat idea of smashing things up. And back when my girls were little, I got some of I think it was a pretty set, and it came with a deck of cards that were like Pokemon, non-IP infringing Pokemon. There's a deck of cards. They're called Itty Bitty Deck. There's a deck of cards that was a non-IP infringing Cute Ponies, My Little Pony. And the fun part about it is The cards, first of all, the art's really cute. It's a ripoff on these things. There's even a one of my favorite decks now is the Ignobles, which is a ripoff of Game of Thrones. For example, instead of the Mother of Dragons, there is the Aunt of Drakes in there, for example. So great little, just pop culture stuff in there. But also, each of the cards have different interactions. And so the replayability of the game is interesting because when you bring these two decks together yourself, your play style is going to be different. But then what also I started to find as I played the game more and more is that what you can do and the kind of things that your deck combination can pull off also very much depends on the other decks that the other players happen to have. So the game becomes really interesting. And one of the other things I thought was deeper than I expected was I figured that each of these decks, because like I said, today now, because I got super addicted to this silly thing when I got back into it. So I ended up buying everything else that was out. So basically I have right now 61, 2, 3, 4, 5, 66 decks, not counting Munchkin, which I keep separated. So 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. So I have 74 different decks right now. And each of these decks is, I don't know, 20 or 30 cards. So it's a lot of cards. And so I've got, and they come with, in the big geeky box, they come with these big plastic dividers that look really nice with nice art on them. So they're all divided up. My brother got into it, as I mentioned. He's got the bigger, geekier box, which I don't know that it just looks nicer. I don't know that it holds much more. It's just a different layout. But in any case, so how the game is played is really pretty simple. What you do is after you get your two decks mashed together, and actually the most complicated part of the game I found was actually picking which of these two, 75 different decks you're going to pair up for yourself, and then which couple are you going to have each of your other players pair up with. The game is 2 to 5 players, and each game takes about, I don't know, they probably say 60 minutes to 90 minutes. It probably takes closer to 90 minutes, but the neat thing about it is, actually really depends. It really depends on a lot of things, but in terms of gameplay, kind of depends on the decks you get and if there's fast scoring decks or not. But what's interesting about it is it doesn't seem to take a lot longer with 4 players than it does with 2 players, as long as you don't have a lot of analysis paralysis. So as long as most of the players play pretty quickly, the game doesn't slow down more players, which is kind of nice. The game seems to end at the same time, roughly. So you're going to pick these decks. Now, the only other type of card, besides the 2 decks that you've smashed up to create your own player deck, is there these other types of cards called base cards. Now, this is in the core game. There are some of the expansions have introduced additional cards that add complexity. More about that in a second. But basically, there's these base cards, and then there's all these different, obviously, decks you mash up. The base cards, you're going to have a deck of those as well. Each set comes with some new, unique themed deck base cards that kind of match the various decks included. So once you collect many, many decks, you have this huge stack of bases that are just all kinds of crazy theming, like the Friendship is Magic Universe, which is, My Little Pony, or you might have a wizarding school, based on Harry Potter. You might have a starship or a new planet, whatever. So there's all these crazy bases. Each base has a break number on it, which is the number required to score the base. And then your decks, your cards, have really, they're divided into 2 types of cards. In your deck, you're going to have minions, which are basically your people, your dudes, if you will. And then you're going to have action cards, right? So during your turn, you basically can play 1 minion, or you play 1 action card, right? And you can play them in either order. So you can play an action card first, or you can play a minion first. Very simple. Your hand size, I think your hand size is 5, I think. Yes, your hand size is 5. So you're going to set up is super simple. The most complicated part of setting up is picking which factions you're going to play. We roll randomly. We just roll percentile dice. There is a drafting mechanic, so you can go around and draft the cards however you want, whatever you want to do. There are some apps out there that help you randomize these things. You don't need all that. But anyway, so you pick your decks, you get those mashed together. You then are going to draw a number of base cards equal to the number of players in the game plus 1. So if there's 2 players, it's going to be 3 base cards. 4 players, you're going to have 5 base cards. Flip the bases in like a little row, but so all players can see them straight out. And now the bases I mentioned before, there's going to be this break number, this big number in the upper left-hand corner. That's kind of like the power you need to take out the base. Then there's going to be these 3 scoring numbers right in the middle of the base. That's how many points, victory points, the player who comes in first when the base scores gets. The second number is the player who comes in second. The third number is the player who comes in third. So far, it's a very simple situation. The only thing that makes the bases sort of unique is what their break number is the first thing you're going to look at. How hard is it to take the base out? And then the second thing is how much are you going to score? Typically, first place player is going to score the most, but there are some bases that are a little wacky where second place player or third place player gets a higher score. It's kind of crazy. And basically how the places are determined is whichever player is at the base when the base scores, whoever's the most power is player number one. More about power in a second. The other thing you want to keep an eye on bases is there's a little text on the bottom of each base that can add special rules. Maybe when you play at that base, you can play an extra minion, as I mentioned earlier. You can play an extra action, or maybe weaker minions die here, or something like that. There's all kinds of crazy base rules. But basically, that's what you're trying to do. And that's how you win, by the way. The first player to 15 victory points, and there's little tokens included in the sets to keep track of your victory points. The first player to 15 victory points wins, and the first player at each base, so the highest scoring player at each base, is going to get between typically 3 to 5 victory points, right? So if you score 3 5-point bases, you're just going to win. Now, of course, it's not that easy because other players can foil you and steal the base from you and things like that. So there's all kinds of crazy events that can happen. That's basically it. So during your turn, right, player one is going to play a minion, and they're going to play an action, and then they're going to draw 2 cards back into their hand, and then the next player goes. It's really that freaking simple. And when you play a minion, you're going to just put the minion on the base of your choice. There's no cost to this. You just put the minion down. And when you play an action, you do whatever the action says. Now, some actions have a special keyword, which basically means those actions will have a trigger that occurs to be played instead of during your turn. So sometimes it'll be like when a base scores, or before a base scores, or after a base scores, or when a minion is killed, things like that. You don't have to remember any rules about killing minions or anything else because cards specifically say this card will destroy a minion of power 2 or less, for example. Now, the other thing you need to know about minions is the minion cards have a power number in the upper left-hand corner. That's how powerful the minion is in a numerical form. And then at the bottom of the card, there's usually some text that describes what any special abilities this minion might have. There's also some cool artwork and some flavor text. So, for example, the red-shirted minions in the Star Voyager set, basically the Star Trek red shirts, their deal is they're only power 2, but whenever another one of your minions would be injured or affected by a card, the red shirt basically jumps in the way of it and is affected instead, right? So they've got a little theme going on here too. So basically you play these cards as you go around, and what's going to happen is different players are going to play minions, and you can play minions on a base that already has minions. So there might be a base with some of my minions and some of my opponent's minions and one other player's minion. And at the end of your turn, whenever you're done in a turn, you check to see if a base is going to score. And that's any base that's the total value of all players' minions there. That total value, if it equals or exceeds the base's breakpoint, that base is going to score. And then whichever player has the most power there, they get the victory points for the first victory point on the card. Whoever's at the second most power gets a second. In the case of a tie, you both get the same points. And if it's not a tie, or if it is a tie, don't forget also, though, that the third place player, in other words, the 2 players tied for first, they get the largest victory points. The guy who is second is really third, so nobody gets the second place points and the other person gets the third place points, if that makes sense. So that's really pretty much it. That's the whole game. And you just go around playing like this until someone hits 15 victory points. It's possible in a turn when a base scores, multiple players break 15 victory points, in which case you see who gets the highest points, because some people might score a little more than others, and that's how you win. What's interesting about the game, what makes it fun and replayable, all the craziness that can occur in the decks. And what's really interesting is they did a really great job of capturing the theme in these decks. I really thought that all the mechanics would be largely the same in each deck, and they would just tweak, a little bit of fluff here and there, like all the decks would have a guy who can jump in the way, and that would be the red shirt in Star Trek, and maybe it's, a weak Weedly get a guy with a shield in the D&D deck or whatever. But instead, they didn't do that. Each of the decks is very, very different. The Pirates, for example, have a lot of movement. They can move their guys from base to base because they have all these ships, so they can go around. And what's interesting is some of these abilities, like moving around or the red shirts from Star Trek's ability to jump in the way, they apply to any of your minions. So suddenly you can have red shirts. Let's say you have Starfaring Dragons. So you have a dragon deck and you have the Starfarers deck, which is basically Star Trek. you could have red shirts jumping in the way to save your dragons, right? Which is really interesting. One of the decks that I really thought had some really innovative mechanics was the Kaiju deck, in which, I mentioned there's those big plastic dividers that go in the box. Well, in the Kaiju deck, the big plastic divider actually is something called a Titan that comes into play, and you really don't have a lot of minions out there. You just have this one giant Titan that gets powered up by all your cards and then moves from base to base like frickin' Godzilla, just fighting everything in its way. It's pretty hilarious. The Ignobles deck, the Game of Thrones deck, those guys, for example, can change ownership of their minions and basically give themselves to other people. Think Game of Thrones treachery and politics. And then when the other player expects to have them at the last minute, you can take them back. One of my favorites is the Red Birthday card. Think the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, where you can give away a betrothed person, have a giant party for them, and then kill every minion that's attending the giant party. Pretty awesome, right? All in a card game with really two mechanics. Play a minion, play an action, that's it. It's really fascinating and interesting to me how much cool theme they pack into these different things. And then when you combine that with the fact that there's like 70 different cards here. So there's a lot going on that I really like. Let me give you a little bit of thought on our thought process and some of the decks you should buy. All the core decks. So, and my brother, as I mentioned, my kids are falling in love with this. Again, because we've had it a while. We just forgot to play it for a long time. Fell back in love with it. They loved it. My brother's family fell in love with it. As I mentioned, he ran out. He didn't even own a set and went out and bought everything, despite that I live down the street from him and have all this stuff. Of course, he's got it all too now, which, why would you not? He's a gamer. But what I love is all the core decks. So all the decks that are not themed after something, because now they've got licensed decks that also come into play. There's actually two that I'm aware of. There's the Munchkin license. So there's a Munchkin box that comes with 8 different Munchkin themed decks. And what's cool is they're all themed basically after D&D classes for the most part. So there's like the Cleric deck, the Mage deck, and then you got your Warriors and Fighter decks. And then you got a few fantasy races in there. You got your Orc deck, your Dwarf deck, your Elf deck, and your Halfling deck. The Elf deck is hilarious. They keep trying to help people. It's really funny. Like when you play this card, you always help someone else when you also benefit yourself, which is pretty interesting. But I will say my family does not like the Munchkin set because some of these themed boxes add additional mechanics to the game, and they like the elegant simplicity of not extra mechanics. So for example, the Munchkin stuff, their bases can introduce 2 extra mechanics, monsters at the bases, which are a different deck of cards that only shows up when there's a Munchkin base. This creates monsters at the base that you must then defeat to increase the power of the base, which does add a lot more math to the game because you're always glancing at the bases to see what its current breakpoint is. And then when you add a bunch of monster cards, the breakpoint gets higher and there's more math you got to do. And they don't really love that. So there's that part. And then also it introduces treasure. So then when you kill monsters, you get treasure, which become more cards in your hand, which you can play, which also is a neat mechanic. But again, it adds a little more overhead to the game. So they don't care for that. So I do have the Munchkin decks. I actually kind of like them, but I put them off to the side. So if I have players who don't mind playing with them, we can bring them in. And if people don't want to play them, we can take them out. The other licensed set is the Marvel licensed set, which I think just came out last fall. So it's relatively new. That set comes with 8 different factions that are all from the Marvel universe. So you've got S.H.I.E.L.D., Masters of Evil, which is basically the folks who fight. It's basically Zemo and those guys. You got the Kree. You got Hydra, of course. You got to have Hydra. You got the Avengers. You got the Ultimates, which is basically Captain Marvel and the super high-end Avengers, super high-end Marvel characters. You got the Sinister Six, which are all the bad guys from Spider-Man's universe mostly. And then you've got the Spider-Verse, which is super cool. So instead of just a Spider-Man deck, you actually have a Spider-Verse deck, which has all different kinds of that are various Spider-Men, which is neat. The art in there is fantastic because it's all right out of the comics. So great art there. If you exclude those 2 sets, though, and by the way, everybody loves the Marvel sets. Their mechanics are basically the same as everybody else's. They just did some name tweaking. So, for example, in all the other sets, those guys you play on bases are called minions. But in the Marvel set, they're called characters. We don't know why, except my theory is that Marvel didn't want Spider-Man being called a minion. That's my theory. I don't know. I just made that up. I have no idea if that's true. But the rest of the decks, so all the ones that are basically by AEG that are all the themes they made up, like the aliens, the Greek myths, the dinosaur deck, the ancient Incas, Grimm's fairy tales, Russian fairy tales, Tricksters, Sharks, all of those have really beautiful and consistent artwork because they're all by the same game company, right? So all of those are fantastic and interchange wonderfully. It's really just the Marvel art looks different, but we don't mind it because it's Marvel and looks great and it doesn't change the mechanics. And then the Munchkin art looks Munchkin-y. And so that's one of the reasons my brother doesn't like the Munchkin set is it looks too Munchkin-y and he prefers all the other art that's kind of cooler. So your mileage could vary on that. Now, there's one other set I don't own. I'm going to admit this live on a gaming podcast, and that is I have never been a big fan of Cthulhu. I'm just not. I don't know what it is. I'm not a Cthulhu guy. So I don't have the obligatory Cthulhu set, which, yes, there's actually a set called the obligatory Cthulhu set, which has all this Cthulhu stuff. It also introduces a new mechanic, which is Madness, which you would have to have in an obligatory Cthulhu set. So that's out there for you if you're a Cthulhu fan as well. So that is Smash Up. We are loving it. I can't recommend this game highly enough. It's a fast, fun game. It doesn't take a lot of overhead to remember how to play it. But there's a lot going on here, and we played it. I brought a bunch of games with us. We did a cabinet camping adventure for Father's Day weekend. As a gamer, I brought, of course, a bunch of different games. Nothing made it to the table except for Smash Up, and we just played it over and over and over again. So I really can't, and I still haven't played even close to all the combinations. I haven't even got to the point yet where I know one of the most interesting factions is the Geeky faction, the Geeks faction, which has things like Felicia Day and Will Wheaton and all that sort of stuff in there. But what's interesting about that deck is it expects you to be a real nerd and know the game so well that you know all the names of the cards that other players might have in their decks, because you can actually, some of their abilities are like call out a specific card. So if you know the Pirates deck really well, you can say, oh, you have the Broadsides card. I'm going to prevent you from using it this turn. You have to be a real nerd to know that. I know the game really well. Love that mechanic, but you got to know the game cold, and we don't even close to that. And by the way, that particular deck, I believe the Geek deck, is only available if you were to buy one of the big expansion boxes for storage, the bigger, geekier box, which I think is what's now out there now, but the big geek storage boxes, which give you really is just a box for storage. Plus, I think there's a couple decks in there that add to your collection. So anyway, Smash Up, we are loving it. I can't recommend it highly enough. Good times. I'm going to give it, and Craig's not here. Craig has played it, though. I actually played it with him the other day at his house. He also seemed to enjoy it. I don't know what you would give it as a rating, but I'm going to rate it. I'm going to say, if you like pop culture and geek stuff, and who doesn't, and a fast, friendly card game, I'm going to give it 3+ with a reroll. There you have it. The D6G rating system. I'm not going to do the full D6G rating system rating right now because I'm only by myself, and I got to move on to my next topic because I know you're going to want to hear this too. So the second thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today is our Song of Ice and Fire campaign that we've been playing. Now, if you're not into the Cool Mini or Not Song of Ice and Fire miniature game, that's okay, because this isn't really about that game. I mean, yes, that's the game we're playing, but this is really more about map-based campaigns in general. And we really introduced asymmetric play into our map-based campaign this time. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the psychology of that as well. So just a quick update on the on where this came from and how this started. So as you may remember, Craig has the old Warhammer tiles. There was a couple of different tile sets that Games Workshop produced. One for Warhammer Fantasy, and then these like hex plastic tiles. They look really, really cool. They have different. They're 3-dimensional. You paint them, and there's mountains and forests and all kinds of cool stuff. And then there's one for 40K and there's one for Fantasy. And they came out with different map-based systems to use with these tiles. And the idea was you would use them with Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer Fantasy, right, to play these different campaigns. These are really old. These are like at least 15 years old. They're ancient stuff. Anyway, Craig had those, and he was like, we were really getting back into the Song of Ice and Fire, and he wanted a campaign that would capture John and Joe, both the John, my brother, and Joe who plays with us in the D&D campaign, capture their imagination to play this game regularly with us, just to have an excuse to get together and play the miniature game. So Craig took the core rules and converted them to Song of Ice and Fire, and then we played through one campaign pretty much with the normal number of tiles and everything else back in the winter, and we really enjoyed it, but a couple things didn't really work out as we had hoped, and Joe won that one, by the way, Joe with the Lannisters. And so we thought it might be good to try this again. We really all wanted to play it again. Joe and John got super into it. They started buying the miniatures themselves because Craig owns so many armies. They were just borrowing them, but they started buying more miniatures to add to Craig's collection. Craig was happily painting them for the collection. So they're getting into it now. We've all been enhancing our stuff with good cases to carry the miniatures around, blah, blah, blah. So it's getting crazy. We're all into it. But I wanted to update you on the campaign because we made a lot of changes. And I don't think I ever walked through the mechanics of the campaign, how we're managing it and running it, and also some of our early lessons from version 2 of this thing. So let me walk you guys through this. I don't think you need to see it at all. We are using, you may have seen some pictures of the map. I've been putting them up on Twitter and on our Discord server. And feel free to ask more questions over there on the Discord server if you'd like. We're on there quite a bit. And by the way, on the Discord server, Joe, John, Craig, and myself are all over there for the D&D stuff. So if you want to go over there and ask us questions about this campaign or razz one of us about why we're doing a dumb move on this campaign, please feel free to do so. I would find it very amusing. In any case, so we had this map. Now, one of the changes we made was we reduced the number of tiles. So one of the things we ran into in the last campaign was Joe won because the victory condition was to get to a certain number of victory points. But we were so spread out on the map that we never really touched each other. So we never actually fought over land. And that was sort of the whole goal of the map-based campaign, which you kind of expect people would be fighting over land. So last time we thought, well, it was neat to watch our kingdoms grow. That was cool. It was neat to see us build little economic engines on the kingdom. That was cool. And then we just ended up fighting each other randomly in symmetric games, meaning every time we fought, our games were equal points, which was fine. Still fun, still had a great time, and it was fun to watch the whole thing play out. But this time we thought, well, it would be nice, and I had to be careful here because I love, Craig's picked on me about this before, I love to dive in and just do, crazy sorts of stuff around custom rules, right? You guys know that I love to create these crazy missions and adventures and everything at different cons and stuff. And so when they're like, hey, let's enhance this campaign, I got into it, probably too much, but in any case. So I decided to use Roll20. And the reason I decided to use Roll20 to track the map and the turns and everything was just that it would be a great way to keep track of the turns when we're not together. I mean, we're all, older fathers. We have a lot of family stuff going on. And so when we get together to play, we just want to play the miniature game. And then when we're done, it'd be great if while we're all remote, we could go in at our own convenience and make whatever moves we need to make on the map, sort of thing, between games. So that was kind of the idea. So I found a pretty good tile set online that matched the in the Roll20 marketplace, actually, that kind of matched the tiles Craig had. I could tweak it. So when we get together at the beginning of the campaign, and there's a video of this on Patreon, you can go watch it. You can see how we picked the tiles to begin with, but then I just laid the tiles out on the screen. Now, one of the big changes we made, because I know some of you out there have asked me, you have the tiles and you want to know how many we're doing. So this is a 4-player campaign. And for our number of tiles, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think we have 30, a little over 30 tiles for 4 players. And that keeps it pretty tight. So if you look at a picture of the map now, you can see how tight it is. And we divided the game up, and I made it, and if you see the pictures I put up, you can actually see the rules for all the phases are on a quick reference, sort of on the same one page. So in my mind, I wanted to turn the campaign map into a board game, right? And so that's what we kind of did here. And so I imagined in my head, I had this game board folded out with the map on it. And on the right-hand side, there would be the quick reference sort of stuff, and even a little sort of worker placement mini game mechanic that handled the very beginning part of the phase, which we turned into the intrigue phase. So in the Games Workshop version of this map-based campaign, there were sort of these strategic choices you could make. And we renamed it Intrigue to kind of match more with Game of Thrones. And we renamed these different things to match Game of Thrones-y sort of activities you can do. So the game is divided into rounds. Each round is then divided into phases, right? So in each round, there's the intrigue phase where each player picks sort of an intrigue action they can do. And these are limited. Each action can only be chosen once. So whoever gets to go first here has an advantage. Then there's the income phase where players collect the only resource in the game now. So in the last campaign, we have 2 resources. This campaign, we only have 1. The only resource in the campaign right now is the crown, which is basically the name of the money in Westeros. So that's why we called it the crown. But basically, there's this money mechanic. There's 1 resource called crowns. So there's an income phase where you get money. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then there's the challenge phase where players issue challenges to each other to fight. And then there's the conquest phase where we take over and gather more land. And in the conquest phase also we build. So there's building, conquering, and claiming in the conquest phase, which is basically building new things. There's capturing land that you got from a battle over a particular piece of land. There's also claiming land, which is basically expanding your kingdom. Right? Now, there's only one other thing we're tracking here in this thing. Well, there's two other things besides crowns, which are your money. We're tracking what round we're in because there's a 10-round limit. So this game's going to end after 10 rounds. We're already in round 3, by the way. More about that in a second. And we're going to also keep track of the throne points. So, throne points are basically victory points. And the player with the most throne points at the end of the game wins. Last game we had a limit on the throne points. I think this time we're just playing until 10 rounds. Or 20 throne points. I'm not sure which comes first. We're have to figure that out. We're going to plan that one by ear. So on this map, and I've got these tracks on Roll20. So when you look at Roll20, what you're seeing is the map, right? And also there's all these great tokens out there for Roll20, which is another reason to get it. And I think I spent like maybe $5 on different tokens packs, which are basically this graphic art. And they have a great set of tokens out there that has all these banners. And they have banners like every fantasy thing on there. So there's like purple banners with drinking horns, and there's orange banners with 3-headed dragons, and there's red banners with lions, and there's blue banners with ravens. I'm like, oh, that'd be perfect for the blue banners or the ravens. We'll call those crows, and we'll make that the Night's Watch faction. And the red banner with lions, we'll make that the Lannisters, and the orange banners with dragons, we'll make that the Targaryens, and the purple banner with the drinking horn, that was kind of like a Viking. We'll call that the Free Folk. And those are the 4 factions we're all playing. So all those banners, then we have a bunch of those lying around, and those we're using to mark on the map who owns what, right? Now, the throne points, the actual victory points to win, those throne points are based on the amount of territory you currently own, plus any cities you've built, right? So you get 1 victory point for each territory, plus 1 for every city you have. So right now in our campaign, the Targaryens are currently leading. Craig's army is currently with 7 victory points. The Crows are in second place after only 3 rounds, by the way. We're actually in the middle of the 3rd round. We're doing the combat phase in the middle of the 3rd round. The Crows, my brother's army, they are at 5 throne points, so they're in second place, a little bit behind Craig. Meanwhile, in 3rd place is the Lannisters with only 3 throne points, and I am in last place. I'm doing terribly. In 2 of my rounds, I made 0 income from battle. I am just doing awful. And the reason for that, well, I have no excuses. My only slight excuse is that the other thing that happened with this campaign, which is fun, is they rebooted the rules. They just did a complete new version of the rules for all of A Song of Ice and Fire. It's called the Vision of Flames 2021 rules set. Just came out. All the new cards came out in the app and everything. It's actually really cool. But they really changed the way the Free Folk worked. I think for the better. I just haven't figured it out yet. So I'm actually really excited about it. I've been painting lots of new units because they're just a little different than they used to be. So anyway, I got some learning to do. So anyway, I'm in last place with 2 throne points at the moment. Now, one of the things, so let's go through the phases, and then I'll talk about how the campaign's been going. So that's the overall campaign map. So there's this round tracker to keep track of where we are in the round. I've got a little icon on there that moves that around. And what's cool about Roll20 is you can put different graphics in different layers. So in the map layer, which is a layer that basically you can't touch unless you're intentionally in that layer as the sort of the game owner, the dungeon master normally, or the game master, I'm throwing back there like the actual map and all these trackers and stuff, like 1 through 10 with little numbers and gray boxes for the round tracker, and 1 through 20 for the throne tracker, and then 1 through 20 for the crowns tracker. And I got some cool icons on there showing crowns and stuff like that, try to add a little pizzazz to it. But then up at the player level are all the flags. So the players can all move their flags around, and each player can control their own flag. So Joe can move his flag up and down when he spends money. And it's like a game board, right? I mean, sure, they could cheat just like you would cheat in person, but of course we're not, because we're all gamers and we're playing fair. But so it's basically a giant game board, giant virtual game board that we're keeping track of our map on. And the best part is, because it's virtual, it doesn't have to sit in someone's house taking up a lot of table space. So let's talk about the 3 rounds, because the campaign round is really pretty simple. Now, for this to make sense, you're going to have to understand the 1 currency in the game. There's actually kind of 2 resources. I guess I'm lying a little bit. The primary resource is the crown, the money, the coins, right? So the dollars. The second resource, those throne points also count kind of as a resource, because when you go to fight, okay, the army size you use, this is another big change we made. So we really never saw any army smaller scale games last time. And A Song of Ice and Fire is actually designed to be played at 2 different sizes. So for smaller point value games, normally a 30-point game, it expects to be played on a 4x4 table. So, 4 foot by 4 foot, miniature game, skirmish size, not necessarily called a skirmish game. You still got blocks of troops, but smaller battlefield, right? Or in a larger engagement, 40 points or more, you would typically play on a 4x6, more traditional sized wargaming table, right? For a big fantasy sort of engagement. Well, in our last campaign, we never saw anything really besides 40-point games for the most part. And so we kind of wanted to see more skirmish games. So for this campaign, all game size, all battle sizes start at 30 points. But then what you own and what you spend in coins affects the game size. So we wanted it to feel like as you grew in power, your point value would increase. And again, I'm talking about Game of Thrones points, but you could make this work for any miniature game. You just have to transition the points to be the right scale for your game, right? So in like a War Machine game where the points are very low, you'd obviously want this to be different than in Game of Thrones where the points are kind of medium. A 30-point game is pretty big. And if you're playing 40K, since points are in the thousands, you'd have to make this different, right? Or Star Wars Legion in the hundreds, for example. So for example, how this works is that what you do is you take your throne points, right? And you divide them by 2 and you add that to 30, and that's your army size. And you round down, by the way. So if I have, when you start the campaign, you start with 1 piece of land, so you have 1 throne point. So in the first round of games, we would have all had 30 points plus 1 divided by 2, rounded down, right, would be 30 points. So in the beginning, everybody has 30-point games. As we grow, so for example, I mentioned before, Craig is currently at 7 throne points, right? So Craig is walking around, when you go to battle Craig, because he's got so much resources now and so much land, his starting army size, right, would be 33, right? Because 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, but you round down, right? So his starting army size would be 33. That's almost an extra unit. So, and it certainly is some nice unit attachments in this game. So Craig's going to have a slight advantage over me. I'm starting out right now at 31, right? Because I'm at 30. I'm at 2 throne points, so I'm playing 31-point games. And by the way, in the challenge section, we have a little formula that shows army size, right? So you don't have to remember all this. But basically, as your lands grow, your base army size slowly increases, not rapidly, but slowly. Now, the reason I bring this up is because you can also spend crowns before the battle, 1 for 1 for army points. So, for example, if I have money and I'm coming into the game, I can take my army size, which is now 31. And if I have 5 crowns lying around, I could spend 5 crowns to go to 36. And now I've actually got an advantage on Craig, but Craig might spend some crowns too. Now, the neat thing is we don't know what each other is spending until we sort of reveal it at the start of the battle, right? So both our armies are unknown and our army size is not known either. Now, we do know the number of crowns currently every player's bank is known, right? So you know what he could bring, but you don't know what he's chosen to spend. Now, this is interesting because the crown also, and this is the big change. Last time we had 2 resources. We had a separate resource for buying land and a separate resource for adjusting your army size. But this time, those crowns are also spent to buy land. So you have to decide now at the end of the turn, you're going to spend crowns to buy land. And you have to decide now, when you're buying land, you're going to buy as much land as you can and sit on basically no money going into the next round. Or are you going to save some money in case a player comes at you and you want to have enough to spend on an army to repel him or her, right? So what I wanted to try with this game was to make this Euro mechanic-ish thing where you have this resource called crowns, which is, it helps you both expand, but also fight, right? And so when do you do it? Now, the problem with using it during a fight is it's one and done. You spend it and it's gone, win or lose. If you spend it on more land, well, it becomes another throne point eventually, not 1 for 1. And for example, to buy a tile, it depends on the type of tile. So to buy more land, it's 3 coins to begin with. And then if it's a river, it's an additional coin. If it's a mountain, it's 2 more coins. If it's a forest, additional coin. So basically, it's 3 to 5 coins to buy more land, right? So if I were going to do that trick I did with Craig to catch up to Craig and have a better game against him, I could spend 4 crowns, but that's what it would cost me to expand into a river. And that's a lot of money because a river is a permanent increase in my kingdom unless it gets stolen from me. So, but whereas the 4 crowns in a battle is just a one shot. So it's a really tough decision, right? Whether or not I spend those coins on land or on a one-off battle that might really matter. One of the things to know about, and then I'll walk through the phases, is there are really 2 types of battles, right? We always wanted to make sure everybody's fighting every round for the fun of it. If your kingdoms are not adjacent, in other words, if I don't own a tile next to you, then I can't challenge one of your tiles. And if I don't challenge one of your tiles directly, then we're not fighting over a specific piece of land. Then we're just going to do what's called a skirmish battle. And in a skirmish battle, I can challenge any player anywhere, and my guys are just fighting, but we're not fighting over land. We're just fighting for fun, for skirmishing. And how those battles work is you play that battle, and then for every victory point you earned, you get 1 coin, win or lose, right? So if I fight Joe and I score 4 victory points, and Joe scores 7 victory points, I will get 4 more crowns, and Joe would get 7, but then he gets +2 for winning by at least 2 points. That's just a rule we made. So Joe would actually get 9 crowns, and I would get 4 crowns. I think I said 4 or 3 crowns, whatever I got for victory points. So always fighting, win or lose, you should get some money unless you're really incompetent like me and go 2 full games with 0 victory points, which is actually kind of hard to do in this system because the mission mechanics in A Song of Ice and Fire make it really easy. So this is the kind of thing to score victory points, by the way. Even if you can't kill your opponent at all, there's all these little objectives. You just sit on them, and every round you sit on them, you get a victory point. So if I was just smarter, I was just dumb. Again, if you're making this for a different game, all you've got to think about is, well, what's the points I can get per round, in a battle, and how can I convert that to coins that make some sense? For us, 1-to-1 actually kind of worked because the victory points are generally low in this game. In a 4x4 table game, 8 victory points causes the battle to end, and in a larger game, 10 victory points causes the battle to end. So you can get some pretty good money from each battle. Now, the other kind of battle that can happen is if you are adjacent to someone, you can challenge that opponent over the land itself. I can say, I'm adjacent to Craig. Craig, I want to challenge this river. And if I win that battle, I will automatically capture that river without having to spend any money on it, which is cool. However, as the defender, Craig has some advantages. First of all, the terrain that's going to be on the battlefield, unlike a skirmish game, which is completely sort of random by the way the rules work, each of the tile types Craig went through in a really neat way and said, well, a river tile has this kind of terrain on it, and a forest tile has this kind of terrain on it. It's more foresty, that kind of stuff. So first of all, the battlefield's going to be different. Second of all, the defender usually gets some kind of terrain advantage. And third of all, I gave the defender a point advantage. So the defender has a defense bonus, and that defense bonus is just they get +5 army points just for being the defender. Basically, they're recruiting the locals. So even if we all have all the exact same resources and exact same throne points, and I'm going in and I'm attacking Craig's thing, and I got a 35-point army, and Craig's got a 35-point army. For Craig being the defender, he gets +5 points, so he's got 40 of my 35. So I could still try to win that game, but I've already got a pretty severe disadvantage because a 5-point advantage is like a full unit. So I'm already in a pretty going in a tougher spot. So to invade, I probably want to have saved up some coins to spend them in my army size so I can catch up to Craig, right? So I could just go in 5 points under, or I could spend 5 coins to make up the difference. Now, Craig could spend 5 more coins, and this is where it gets sort of interesting. You can stare each other down and be like, are you going to spend the 5 coins? Maybe Craig stripped himself last turn, so now he's vulnerable, he's into resources, right? So we're trying to get this whole situation going here, back and forth. What do you do, right? So those are basically the mechanics. Now, if they've got a city there, it's an additional +5, so it's hard to capture a city, that kind of thing. So there's some little extra bonus things going on there too. But that's basically the mechanics of the game and how the coins work. So the only other thing you got to really know to see how this is going, and then I'll give you guys a quick summary of how things are going, is what happens in each round. So I mentioned in the round, first there's the intrigue phase. Now we spent a lot of time figuring out these intrigue choices. In the Games Workshop system, there's a bunch of different things you can do, but at the end of the day, most of them felt not as good as others. So we ended up seeing that the same players were always picking these same sorts of things. So we rebranded them completely. And the other thought that sort of came to me was Some of these are more powerful than others, so they should cost something. So some of these are free, but some of them cost coins. So now there's things that can really hurt your opponent or give you a huge advantage, but they cost you coins. And again, your coins are things you can spend on land, or they're things also you can spend on armies. So spending them here is another tough choice you got to make. So what are some of the things you can do? Well, we try to name them also all after Game of Thronesy kind of stuff. But for example, one of the thought process went in here. So Joe made a good point once. He said, the problem with all these map-based, all these campaigns, all these cool campaigns that grow over time is all of them, without a doubt, exception, the winners keep winning and the losers keep losing, right? Over time, the winners just get momentum. Maybe they got lucky in the beginning. Maybe they're slightly better general. And there's no catch-up mechanic, right? And so eventually you're just way behind. You can't catch up. And so that really stuck with me. And I really thought, I want some good catch-up mechanics here. So the first thing we did was we made this into a worker placement. And so on my game board here, there's an icon for each of these intrigue choices. And we put a banner of each of the players' banners next to it. And once you put your banner on an intrigue choice, no one else can pick that one. And the order of intrigue choice is in reverse player ranking order. And I have a little graphic on the map that explains player ranking order. The highest ranked player has the most throne points, which is the most basically land. And they're winning because that's the highest, they're winning. If that's a tie, then we look at how many coins the players have. And if that's a tie, then we look at how many mines players own. Mines are something you can build in the land that generate more coins per round. So there are things you can do that generate more money. And we'll get back to the income phase in a second here. So back to our intrigue phase. So in reverse player order, so in the worst player mode, remember I had those 2 games where I got 0 victory points. So I was definitely, and even now I'm the worst player because I got no revenue. I couldn't buy a lot of land. So right now got only 2 throne points while the leader's got 7. So he's got basically 3 times as many as I do. And my brother in second place has got 5 and Joe's only 1 ahead of me, but we'll explain what happened to Joe in a little bit. So Joe got beat down, but we'll talk more about that in a second. So we got this intrigue thing, right? So we decided I wanted there to be 3 sort of free catch-up mechanics, with the first being the no-brainer for the worst player, and then other 2. So the first choice for the one of the free ones is called raid. And when you raid, you pick a territory adjacent to your land you own. You put a flaming token on it. So you're basically burning the land there. You're raiding the villages, but it costs you nothing. And you gain 3d3 coins, right? So this is a freebie. It's a no-brainer. It's a great way to generate coins. In my first round, I did this because I had a terrible round 1. By the way, we don't do intrigue in the very first round of the game because players aren't ranked yet. So in the very, very first round, we skip the intrigue phase and we go right to basically skirmishes. And there's no income either because no one owns anything yet. We just skirmish, and that kind of dictates the next round. So my first skirmish round, I did terrible. So then in round 2, I got to be the guy that raided. And because raided is the cheapest thing that generates money, and it generates 3d3 coin money, which is good. So I rolled it and I got super lucky and got 9 coins. Now, in most battles, you top out at 8 or 9 or 10. So that was really good for me. So it kind of made up for the fact that I had done terrible in round 1. The only downside was because intrigue happens at the top of the round, everybody else was able to fight, get money from their battle, and then buy land at the end of last round. I missed the entire land buying phase. So I'm like 1 cycle behind, but I got a lot of money, which is good. Next up, other things you can pick that don't cost any money. Feast for Crows is another good one. It gives you an extra D3 coins after a battle, right? So the timing of this is interesting. In the raid, you get the money in the income phase, which is handy if you're going to go fight somebody. You could spend it there, where Feast of Crows doesn't come until after the battle, and it's only 1 D3. So raid is definitely better. The downside to it is you have to burn some land. And by the way, when a land has been burnt and has a raid token on it, it can't be raided again. And it costs 1 more to acquire it because basically you got to rebuild the mess you made, right? So it's kind of neat because it's kind of a scorched earth thing. I can make it cost my opponent more to come through the territory I've raided. Or if I just want to go back and take it over later, but I need to burn it now because I need to, which is actually what I did last round. I got to do what I got to do, right? So Feast of Crows lets you get extra money after a battle. And then the third one that is also free is Right of Conquest, which makes the first tile you purchase this round 1d3 coins cheaper, right? So it's also pretty good if you're going to buy more land, but it's only really used to buy land, whereas Feast for Crow is money, right? So three of the choices are all around getting more money or reducing cost, right? And those are the three things that cost nothing. Everything else cost at least some coins. So what's interesting about this in a 4-player campaign, if you choose fourth, so if you're in the lead like Craig is, assuming players 1, 2, and 3 always pick the free ones, the lead player's either going to have to pick nothing or always pick something that costs money, which is sort of interesting, right? But I also wanted to make some things on here that were really juicy, because what's interesting is in round 3 here, not everybody picked the free ones. I picked Raid again. My Joe, who's in second to last place, picked Feast of Crows because he needed money. But both my brother John and Craig both picked things that cost money, because there's some pretty cool stuff you can do out there. One of the things John picked was something called Dwarf's Industry, where basically the fluff behind this is you're bribing Tyrion to help you. So you give Tyrion 3 coins, and he goes out, Tyrion Lannister, he goes out and he gets some mercenaries to work for you temporarily, and he adds 3d6 points to your army size for this round, right? Just bonus guys. Now it costs you 3 coins. You could roll crappy, roll 3 ones and get 3 points for 3 coins, but you're probably not, right? This is huge. The thinking behind this was like an oh crap mechanic, where if some super powerful player is coming in to invade your territory, you would spend the 3 coins on the dwarf, which is basically the money to take over our territory, so it's not cheap, to just Hail Mary, hope you got a bunch of extra money, a bunch of extra army to come help save the day and surprise your opponent. We also make very clear rules that you have to roll this before your opponent builds their army. So your opponent at least knows if you're fighting that person, it's after a challenge has been issued, and your opponent knows what you rolled. And in this case, John rolled a 12, which was pretty rough. But what's interesting about that is I knew it before I challenged, and we also do skirmish challenge in reverse rank order. So I was able to avoid challenging John. So I'm like, I'm not challenging that mess. He's got the dwarf on his side, which is kind of neat. And then Craig chose, another one that costs money is Chaos as a Ladder. So Chaos on a Ladder is a Littlefinger one. And normally when you buy new territory, you have to buy territory adjacent to something you already own. But Chaos as a Ladder lets you buy any tile that nobody owns anywhere on the board for 1 more coin than normal. So basically you can use Littlefinger to establish a remote base somewhere. And so what happened with this one, which is neat, so we added this one to the game just to see what fun things would happen. Joe had a glorious first round of combat. So in his second round, he used Chaos as a Ladder to get right next to Craig, right next to him. But literally adjacent to him, because one of the powerful map locations was right next to Craig. So Craig then immediately attacked Joe, even with a 5-point deficit, was victorious, which was interesting because Craig for the first time brought all 3 dragons with the mother of dragons because they were out. And Joe was just stunned, didn't know what to do with them and just got tabled, basically. So Craig had a glorious victory, even though he was 5 points down, which is interesting because at the start of this game, this goes back to the asymmetric play. So this is one of the first campaigns we've really played seriously with asymmetric army sizes. So Craig was 5 points down, and yet, and we all thought he was going to lose. Like my brother John's like, yeah, we're going to find this whole off, different sized army thing. No one's going to like it. Craig tabled Joe, even though Joe had a 5-point advantage. Joe only ended up walking away from that game with 2 victory points, which actually is, only 2 better when I got 0. I got 0. So I did worse when points were even. So it didn't even mean so Joe had an advantage, walked with only 2 victory points. Craig got glorious victory points, which means he recaptured the territory. So he got the territory for free that Joe invaded next to him. And then Craig got so much money from this glorious victory. He did Chaos as a Ladder the next round and grabbed a tile right in the middle of the table that no one's near. That's another key piece that's going to give him, it's a Maester's Tower. It's going to give him bonuses each round now that no one's even near getting. So Craig had an awesome round, all because he won a really hard to win asymmetric game. So it made it even more glorious, right? So other things you can pick from the intrigue round, we have things like Dark Wing, Dark Words, which you can pay a coin and you can influence the scenario roll, plus or minus, so you can make it different. There's a diplomacy one. You can pay 2 coins and make sure a player can't challenge you this round, kind of buy yourself some time. There's an Outriders one. You can pay 1 coin for. My brother likes this one a lot, which lets you select your army after the mission is rolled. So normally you got to build your army and go with it, but he likes to be able to know what the mission is first. So that's another one. One of them is My Little Birds Are Everywhere. We're referencing the spider. You can pay 1 coin there to know your opponent's army size. So right now, you actually don't know your opponent's army size when you pick your army size. So if you both have coins to spend, you have to guess what you think he's going to spend. You might spend too much or too little. You could spend a coin to know that, for example. So these are kinds of things that are out there for the intrigue phase. And so far, I've been really pleased with the different intrigues that have been chosen. So I feel like we've got a pretty good spread right now. So I like those where those are going a lot. After the intrigue phase is the income phase. Income phase is pretty simple. You generate revenue for the things you've built. Farm tiles, which are tiles you can capture on the board, those all generate 1 crown. Any ones you own. You can build these things called mines. You can build mines in the mountain tiles or in the river tiles. Again, you spend coins on this during the conquest phase. And these generate a number of D3s. Interestingly, we decided to limit this a little bit. So a roll of 3 equals 0. So you don't get any money for a roll of a 3. But mountain mines generate. That's because the old Games Workshop mechanic, when these things generated money, was if you ever rolled doubles, they stopped working and went away. We thought that was too harsh. So instead, we just made 3s equal 0. So if you roll all 3s, you get nothing this round, but the mine doesn't go away. But you don't normally do that, right? So the mountain mines, this is why mountains cost more. Mountain mines generate 3d3 money. And rivers and forest mines, because we figured you could build water wheels on the river to generate revenue that way, or obviously chop the trees down. So rivers and forests are valuable land. Also, you can get 2d3 from those. So if you build enough mines and own enough land, you can kind of generate this little economic engine, which we kind of wanted to see happening too. So that's the income phase. Then, as I mentioned before, there's the challenge phase where we do the challenge phase. Interestingly, we discovered in one of our play tests that we always had it that the skirmish challenges happened. And those were in reverse rank order. The weaker player gets to challenge the players first to kind of, again, give it a little catch-up mechanic. But we found that if there was a really key land battle that happened to happen, you could be spoiler on this and stop it. So instead what we've done is we did kind of want to have the lead player sort of dictating the politics of the land. So the lead player first gets to issue any conquest challenges. These are challenges that are going to be fighting over land where people are adjacent. So in player ranking order from first to last, people who are adjacent can start to issue challenges. That way, lower players can't stop conquest, right? So important conquests are going to happen. But then, after all those happens, the skirmishes, which are really just about gaining some coins around, having a little fun, those are in reverse player order. And that's handy so you can avoid playing the guy who just picked Dwarf's Industry, for example. So I was able to kind of force the dragons to fight the crows last round, which was kind of fun. So that's how the challenges work. After challenges are all done, you're going to figure out how much money was earned from the challenges and if anybody won the land battle. If they did, they get to conquer that. And then we go into the conquest phase, which is really 3 steps. There's the building step where you can build anything. We made that one first, so you can't build into newly acquired territory, right? So you can build a castle or a mine or upgrade your city. Then there's the conquest phase where the winners then take over the territories they just conquered if they had a fight like the one Craig did when Joe got too close to his land. And then last is claim, where you can buy new land at its cost. And we made a rule here that changed from last time where the unclaimed tile you're going to buy has to have been adjacent to a tile you owned at the start of a round. So it can't be newly acquired territory, and you can't just buy a bunch of tiles in a row and streak across the land, right? So you have to kind of organically expand slowly until you own more land. So there you have it. I will say as a quick summary of what's been going on, we've been most pleased with how it's been. I've been pleased. I think everybody else is pleased. They still seem to be enjoying themselves. The asymmetric play was really interesting. When the first real big asymmetric game was when Joe invaded Craig's land because Joe was defending, and when Joe did cast his ladder next to Craig, so Craig wanted to kick him out, so he attacked him. Craig had a 5-point deficit because Joe had the defender's bonus. Plus, Joe had the advantage of one of his units could move through the woods unimpeded because that's one of the woodland advantages for the defender. So Joe had 2 advantages going in. Despite this, Craig came in, brought a really unique army with all the dragons. It was very fluffy from Game of Thrones because basically Khaleesi walked up with her dragons, just freaking scorched the Lannisters. Joe just had the wrong army. Even though he had a point advantage, he brought cavalry to a dragon fight. So he had all this cavalry expecting to outmaneuver Craig in a low model count power piece, but Craig did a low model count flying dragon move, and it was over. So Craig just pretty much tabled him because Joe brought the wrong army to the battle. and which was great. So even though Craig had the disadvantage was in the asymmetric battle, he still pulled out a well-earned and really valuable victory for both the map, the land, as well as the money, as well as victory points. So that worked out. Then this round was sort of interesting because my brother took Dwarf's Industry for the Crows, and he got a 12. So that was an asymmetric game where I think John had like a 12 or 13 point advantage over Craig. Craig again came to the battle. Now, this was just a skirmish battle, so it wasn't super important from a point of view of someone's going to lose some important land over it. But still, Craig wanted to earn some money. So going into this battle, Craig was really concerned, and he definitely got thrashed. But he got thrashed. However, he did score 3 victory points, earning himself 3 crowns. And John, I'm looking at the notes here, John earned I believe it was 14 victory points, which is a lot. I think it was 12, actually. He got a lot of victory points because he just basically owned everything and scored a lot less strong, which is a lot. But to get those 12, he had to spend 3 for Dwarf's Industry, I'm sorry, Siri's talking to me, plus 1, he spent 1 extra coin to get to the number he wanted. So he actually ended up spending 4 coins to win 12. So he invested 4 and got 8, which is good ROI, right? So that's pretty good. Nothing wrong with that. Meanwhile, Craig invested, I don't think Craig spent any coins and and got 3. So again, did Craig get hammered because John had a huge advantage? Yes, but Craig still got 3. And we should point out that Joe, when he had a 5-point advantage over Craig, only got 2 coins. So Craig with a 12-point deficit did better than Joe did with a 5-point advantage in terms of victory points. And we should also point out that I've had 2 games now where the point values were equal. And in both those games, I scored 0 victory points. So I've done worse twice than the guy who was down 12 points. So I can't say it's asymmetric play. I don't think the data supports that asymmetric play is a problem. Now, I will say, is it fun? Is it I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think we have to kind of get used to it a little bit. And you have to kind of look at the bigger picture, which is the overall long-term thing. And I think if it would happen over and over again, and every game you played, you were on the downside of it, it might get a little annoying, but I'm hoping that people will look at that and go, ooh, I'm not going to let John get Dwarf's Industry next time. I'll take it. Or let's try to see if we can strip John of some of his money. Of course, now after that last battle, John is sitting on a lot of cash. So I think he's going to be just fine this round. It'll be interesting to see what everybody spends on things right now. But so far, it's interesting. We're going into round 4. We're getting a lot done. The map is getting people are getting close to each other now. It's going to be interesting. The order we buy land this round is going to be important. And again, we do buy land in reverse rank order again. So again, there's quite a few catch-up mechanics in there to give the lower rank people some advantages. And I think there's a pretty good chance because it's going to depend on how my battle with Joe goes tomorrow. But there's a pretty good chance I could pass Joe and not be in the bottom anymore. And Joe just really is mouth-watering over the raids. He thinks the raids are just OP. So I'm pretty sure he can't wait to get his hands on the raid event. I think he's going to get his wish, unless he devastates me this round. But I'm hoping he doesn't. I think we're going to have a pretty even battle. I think we're both going into this battle. I got way more money than he does, so we'll see what happens. But there you have it. Thanks for listening. I hope you found today's episode good, where we talked a little bit about Smash Up as well as an update there on our Song of Ice and Fire campaign. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the D6G.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@the d6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.